All right. Good evening out there, Facebook, YouTube, and Common Grounds podcast listeners. This is Chris from the Common Grounds podcast, and welcome to season 2. We made it all the way through season 1. We took a small break for a couple weeks, and now we are back. Tonight's episode, we will be interviewing Kevin Smith from Beansmith. I need to switch hats. It's my first roaster hat that he sent me, but I've been working all day. I didn't want to get the new hat dirty, but we'll be talking to Kevin here in a few minutes. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, for sharing the show. Had a bunch of shares, had a bunch of invites. Really nice to see everybody participating and sharing the message about Common Grounds. So tonight, meet your coffee roaster with Kevin Smith. We're going to roll in with a new intro that we just finished up and bring up Kevin. Thanks for tuning in and listening. All right. Good evening, Kevin. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing really good. Yeah.
Can you hear me okay? Everybody's good there?
I can.
Okay.
I don't know about the intrawebs, but I can hear you.
Awesome. I'm glad that you can hear me. Let me go over here and jump on Facebook and make sure I'm live over there as well. And then we'll get it wrapped up. Have you had a busy day today?
Not too much. I had to do some stuff and get things together and everything. I'm going camping this weekend, so I did a bunch of work stuff and then got some stuff ready for some relaxing as well. So
nice. Looks like Emily Makes Coffee is already tuned in. Our mutual friend there in the Pacific Northwest with you. She says, awesome new intro and hi guys. She's tuning in on YouTube. And if you're on Facebook or YouTube and you've got a question for me or Kevin tonight, just throw it up in the comments and we'll get to it once we see it. If you're listening to this later on down the road on a podcast, feel free to email me at chris@roastersmarketplace.com if you've got a question for me or Kevin, or hit us up on social media and Facebook. We'll get all the links and show notes later on with the show. But you said camping, and I believe a few weeks ago you sent me a picture and y'all were already out in the river. Where have you been going? That is absolutely beautiful.
So a few weeks ago, we went down and we have some friends that own property on the North Fork of the Santiam River. And he's a custom cabinet builder. So they bought this house and it's right on the river. And he's made all of the furniture for it. So it's absolutely gorgeous. And that was sort of the week of the 4th of July. My wife is their company shuts down. They have a corporate shutdown for the week of the 4th of July. And so we took 3 days and sort of got out and got down to the river and just relaxed. It was nice.
That's awesome. How much is the lockdown affecting you there? I mean, it's still, if you're listening to this down the road, this was recorded on the 16th of July, and Texas is kind of in the middle of a new lockdown and a new mask everywhere. Just what's it doing to y'all right now?
Yeah, it's sort of a combination. So I think they're taking some preventative measures to not open up too many things too soon, because they don't want a second wave. Because if that were to happen, I think then they would really lock things down. So they're being precautious. But I mean, as of I believe this last week, the governor came out with some new executive orders on face masks. It's fairly similar to Texas and stuff. And then just they have cut back on group meetings. So group meetings can't be more than 10 outside of businesses and churches. So I think they're trying to I don't know, appease both sides, people that are very scared and people that are scared of either the pandemic and people that are scared of the economy.
Yeah.
So like it's understandable on in both regards. Like we have to protect people, like not only ourselves, but as like good individuals, we have to be responsible to like sort of watch out for like our fellow people in our community. But then I could totally understand how there can be a lot of people that are very nervous about, finances. I mean, the unemployment sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. So I mean, I was talking with a manager of one of the restaurants that I supply, and they had staff that hadn't gotten checks for 12 weeks from unemployment, and then all of a sudden got, a check for like 10 grand in the mail,
Yeah.
10 grand worth of checks. So it's like, I think a lot of people are really nervous, and so are like living off of credit cards, hoping that stuff changes or gets back a little bit more to normal. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just, it's sort of being flexible and figuring out how to pivot in this time, and in whether as an individual, but then also as a company. I think it's important to see where you can do those sort of things.
And that's kind of a perfect lead in into what you're doing right now and how you got to the point of, roasting coffee at, a small batch or a micro batch commercial level. Not saying like thousands of pounds a week, but just at the level that you're at. Tell me a little bit about how you got into coffee roasting, how you got into specialty coffee, and your decision to go from hobby to actually, doing it as a full-time gig.
Yeah, sure. So I enjoyed coffee. I probably didn't really start drinking coffee until I was in college, to sort of keep me up. I didn't really get into specialty coffees really until I came out to the Pacific Northwest. I'm from the Midwest, so I'm from Ohio originally. And then when I moved out here, I started buying coffee and getting coffees from, small craft roasters here locally, and really started to enjoy that, and sort of was more open to trying new things. And then I got a little micro roaster, like a little Nesco, like air roaster as a birthday gift, for 4 years ago on my birthday, or a little bit more than that, 5 years ago. And there was like a little green coffee shop here locally called Mr. Green Bean. And so I just started going down and buying. I wanted to try coffees from wherever I could get coffees from. And so I decided to be systematic about that and started in Mexico, worked my way down into the tip of South America. Then I went to Africa. Then I went to island coffees and sort of took notes. And just for about 3 years, I was just sort of a home roaster and roasted, and then started getting more into it, and then roasting for like family members and like friends for gifts and birthdays and stuff like that. Would roast coffees if we were going to have a dinner party or something like that. And then I was at a place in my career, in my job, I guess, where I was ready to leave. I was kind of unhappy, and my wife came to me and was like, if you were to quit your job today, what would you do? Like, to open up your own business, what would you do? And coffee was really the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, I think coffee, because I love it. I love talking about it. I love roasting it. There's just so many things that I enjoyed about the coffee community and the, the process and the flavors and everything. And she's like, well, let's make a plan. because I want you to quit your job. I want to encourage you, just because I was pretty unhappy where I was at with some stuff that had been going on at my company. And so we started saving, and we, basically set up a budget. This is how much it's going to take to start the coffee company, to start our thing. And when I got to that number, I basically went in and I turned in my resignation. And then I took a little bit of time off to transition, like headspace wise, to just clear my head and be like, all right, I'm not in this anymore. And then how do I focus on, building a website, doing sales? What's that look like? How often should I be roasting? How much should I be roasting? The things that when you get into it will organically sort of reveal themselves. Like you'll know you need to roast more or you need to roast less, depending on the volume and how much you're selling and stuff. And that's sort of where I went. And so after I quit my job and started it, I was just, I launched on my birthday, 3 years to the day after I got my first roaster. So I launched on September 1st, 2 years ago, 2018, and sort of haven't looked back. And just like my quality of life is just so much better now that I've decided to sort of take that leap and go out on my own and do my own thing. And it's worked out. So
that's awesome. That's amazing to be able to switch gears like that. That relates so much to where I was when I started Roasters Marketplace. It was literally, the conversation with, I'm not happy with my job. I'm not happy with where I was, at currently. I wonder, laughing at dinner one night, I wonder if roastersmarketplace.com was available. And when I realized it was, I was like, that was kind of like the spur of that was the push down the hill, to go, or push up the hill, depending on which way you want to look at it, to do it. And moving forward from that decision was just one of the best things I've done in my life. We've got a couple of viewers dropping in. RV Traveling MIA Research. He actually ordered some coffee from you. I think he was the first order from the beginning of the month over at Roasters Marketplace, and a couple of the other my other followers have jumped on the channel as well. Thrifty Angela, an RV Traveling MIA Researcher. If they've got any questions, just throw them up in the chat and we'll ask Kevin or myself. When you started your world tour, so that's what I'm going to call it, your world tour.
Yeah.
When you were taking notes, were you like, okay, this is a coffee I want to go back and explore again, or maybe I don't want to try this coffee, or I need to change the roast? When you first get a green, and when you were exploring that, what did those notes look like?
Yeah. So I'm such a novice, and I would even to this day consider myself a novice, even though I know a little bit more now than I knew back then. But, when Emily's on here, right? She's one of probably my biggest mentor, someone that has taught me to roast. And that was one of the things I actually, when I was still working for my previous company, but I was thinking about leaving, a local roastery opened up a commercial, learn how to roast commercially on bigger scale equipment, and get certified on their equipment. And then they lease out time on their equipment if you're certified on their equipment, sort of thing. And she was one of the instructors. And so I've really gone to her with questions and stuff like that. But yeah, I was so novice to coffee and didn't really know. I have a decent palate. I like to cook a lot. So flavors, I can pull a lot of flavors out. And prior to getting into coffee, I homebrewed for 15 years. So I had all of the science and, creation of that. But with coffee, I had the instant gratification of it's done. I can enjoy it right away. Right.
Yeah,
And so
for sure.
that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about it. But what I was doing is I was just basically pulling like flavor notes out of the thing, out of like when I started. And then once I got through like a specific region, so if I got through the mid Latins, then I might be like, wow, I really like the coffees that or, I did 2 coffees from Guatemala. I really like those coffees. Right. And it's like, so like, let's break that down. Let's break the country of origin down, and then let's break the regions down. So I did a little bit of that. And then, it was just like, what's my palate and what does my wife like? So I would roast something and be like, I don't really like that. And I don't know, honestly, there's probably a lot of coffees that I just didn't know anything about, and I didn't know how to roast them at that time. But so that's basically how I started it out. And then once I sort of went through and had my notes, like, I really want to do this coffee again. I want to do a coffee from this region, from this country of origin. Do I want to do a micro lot from specific area, or am I okay with doing something that's, a region where, multiple coffees are coming in for it? And that's sort of, I just was more about the flavor that I was getting out of it. So, and even then I was like, so like naive to have any idea of how to change a profile,
Yeah.
on that equipment. And then once I like took the class at Buckman's, it really showed me how to pull some of those flavors, how to mute things down, how to bring things to the forefront, what are you doing during the roast process, when it gets to first crack, when it comes, it's like all of these things that I didn't really know anything about. I was basically like, roast it, okay, that color looks pretty good, drop it, I'm done.
Yeah.
How's it taste? And that's sort of what it was for like the first like 2 years of roasting at my house. I was like, that looks about right. And then when I started like researching and studying about, the art of roasting, then it sort of changed my sort of outlook. And I could take a coffee that tastes one way the first time I roast it, but then sometimes I can see the potential in being like, oh, I need to change some things. I need to change some airflow, or I need to have the heat on the front end of this and really, bring it out. And moisture content and all of those things were things that I didn't really originally take notes on. And now I sort of do.
When I got into this, the roasting side, I keep on reading on, the different forums and stuff. I've watched some videos on it, and I need to get into it. I don't want to get into it so much as I want to do it because I don't, hold on a second here. I'm sorry. I'm not there, and I don't think I will be there. There's just too much that goes into that if I ever roast coffee, it's 10 to 15 years down the road. I don't have the time for it right now.
Yeah.
But as you talk about the process, some of those same ideas and concepts transfer over to the home brewing side of it, because now I can take a coffee and I'm like, okay, I can smell different fruit notes to it. I want to see if I can bring those out. Let's maybe grind it a little bit finer, hit it with a little bit of a higher temperature water, and see if I can extract that. Or if that didn't work, let's reverse that. Or changing, even just changing the brew methods on some of the stuff. I had your, let's see, your Vietnamese coffee, and I was so excited to get that in that you sent, because I hadn't had a Vietnamese coffee yet, and I've had Vietnamese coffee, but it was probably like Bustelo or something that they just
Yeah.
brewed up, and it wasn't actual Vietnamese coffee. And so when I started exploring that, I'll try it this way, I'll try it this way, I'll try it in the V60, I'll try it in the wave, I'll do French press, and all those little nuances of the brew technique come out. So I can only imagine what that looks like when you have essentially, I'm just taking the art that you've made and shining a different light on it as a brewer, as the home brewer. And
Sure.
you're taking the canvas and the paint and saying, okay, this is what we can do with it. And you can use that. That's a really good way of looking at it. But Emily says, we're going to throw up her question here. Please talk about your approach to beer collaborations. So tell me about beer collaborations, because I love a tasty beverage.
Yeah. Well, so, touching off of, being a home brewer for a long time. And then also in my previous job, I had a lot of connections in the restaurant industries and the breweries locally. And so I started, I've done 2 years in a row. I've done since starting, this, I've done the Northwest Coffee Beer Invitational. So they invite 20 breweries to pair with 20 roasteries, and you collaborate to come up with a beer, and a coffee beer. And so it was interesting, and we've done a couple different ones, and I've done a handful of different ones with local breweries. So I mean, we've done the like traditional stout, coffee stout, where it's like, all of the good flavors that you get in a stout, where it's malty and it's dark chocolate and it's caramely, and you pair that very easily with something, like a Costa Rican or a Guatemalan, Brazil, where it has those cocoa notes. And then we did a Ethiopian and Guatemalan blend cream ale. And we did that as a cold brew. So I did a cold brew blend of, oh no, it was Kenyan and Guatemalan, and we did that as a cold brew, and then mixed that in to do cream ale. So I mean, it looked like a pilsner, but then it had these like really nice fruity notes and sweet notes on it. And so it's just been a lot of fun. I mean, this last year we did a cold brew IRA with three different origins, single origin. We did a Kenyan, a Guatemalan, and a Brazil, and blended those and done that. So
without giving away any of the brewing secrets on that, at what point does the coffee and the beer meet?
You can do it a couple different ways. So you can do it in the boil. So I've done it in the past where you're putting it in at the same time you're putting in some grain. So imagine you have like, a bag where you're steeping coffee, almost like a tea bag, into this big batch, right? And you're doing that. And then those flavors will be, a lot deeper and richer, because that's prior to fermentation. Then I've also done it where it's been post fermentation. So after the beer is created, then we come together and we figure out what extraction process we're going to do. Like, just like you said, right? Are we going to do a bunch of espresso? Are we going to do just regular coffee? Or are we going to do cold brew? And what are the flavors that we get from those unique extraction processes? And then starting to figure out, all right, now we need to figure out concentrations. So how much do you do? Like, do you do 20% coffee to 80%, beer, and what is the focus? right? So if you're going to a beer festival, I think the focus is beer, but it should definitely have some attributes. Like you shouldn't overwhelm one or the other. Like it should show both of them in their own light, and they should enhance one another, right? So it should be like on the head of the beer, you smell coffee, right? Or you're like, oh, there's this sweetness to it, right? Or these chocolate notes aren't from the beer, they're from the coffee. Or these fruity notes are from the coffee. So I think that's how I've done it, and I've worked with, both breweries, and how I've done my own home brew with coffees. But yeah, on the big batches, it's just depends on how much you're making and sort of the volume size and how you want to do it, like logistically.
Yeah, yet another hobby that I've always wanted to get into, and haven't never had the time or the equipment or the patience to get in. I read when I was in Iraq in 2006, 2008. I was ordering beer books because I was like, I'm going to start homebrewing when I get back. And then at that point in time, I was shipping everything to my parents' house, and then they were shipping it to me. And my mom was worried I was trying to make beer in Iraq. I was like, no, I'm not trying to make beer in Iraq. You can't really do that very easily anyway. But it's always been something that I've wanted to do. I've helped a couple people rack some mead before, but it's so interesting that there might be a lot of people that are out there that are into craft beer or craft whiskey that are still drinking crap coffee. I mean, just
Sure.
what it boils down to,
Yeah.
that they don't understand, or they don't know, or they haven't been introduced to really, really good coffee, that you can get up and have almost the same experience first thing in the morning, or maybe second thing in the morning, is having a really good cup of coffee and exploring those flavor notes.
Yeah, it is amazing when I started this sort of venture. I mean, the amount of people that almost feel like ashamed or embarrassed to tell me they drink XYZ, 7-Eleven coffee or Folgers or, Starbucks or whatever it is that they drink. And, I think there's a time and place for a lot of different coffees, right? It's like the coffee that I'm going to enjoy in the morning, it's dependent on how much time do I have in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's going to be a lot different than maybe the coffee I drink after dinner, sort of thing. So I think, and with that being said, there are so many nuances that you can get out of coffee that when people are like, oh, I don't like coffee, and I'm like, well, maybe you've never had a good cup of coffee, right? Maybe like the person that was brewing it for you just threw it into, a pot, didn't know how much coffee they should be putting in. Maybe that coffee pot doesn't even really get hot enough to bring the flavors out, that people are, saying that are in there, when, we're cupping coffees and you're tasting certain flavors. It's like, well, maybe that it wasn't enough to like reveal that. Right. And so, and it's the same with wine and beer. So like people that are like, I've tried it, it's no good. It's like, you've only ever you drank an IPA one time and you didn't like it. So you hate beer from now on. Right. But then there's people that are like, oh, there's a lot of different, I mean, you can have a naturally processed Ethiopian that tastes like blueberry juice, and, and then you could have something that's like vastly different than that, on the other, from a different country or roasted differently, the type of coffee bean, all that stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it is interesting that I know a lot of people that are very specific about one sort of thing in their life like that. Like, I really like good wine, but I don't care about all this other stuff, and it's kind of a shame because there's a lot to enjoy out there of, whatever. But
the really, we get up in the morning, and the routine is I get up, and first thing we're doing is making coffee. First thing I'm doing is making coffee. And I've got my wife's AeroPress recipe down I'm still weighing it, but I'm just pretty much weighing weighing the grounds at this point and just filling it the rest of the way up with water. It's because I've got it down. I know it, and we're taking really good coffee, as long as you're brewing it kind of decently, is really, really easy to make a really good cup of coffee. And that's what I found with different roast profiles, different origins. I drink a lot of single origin now, just because of the nature of the beast. But we get a Colombian blend, and that, if you would look it up in the dictionary, it has all the classic coffee characteristics, and it's a great morning coffee. We're going to field another question here, another one from YouTube. And this is what we talked about. And the first time I talked to you on the phone, we talked a little bit about your competition background. So tell us about the coffee competition that you got into.
So I've done a couple, and yeah, the first time I did it, it was like maybe a few months after I had launched Beansmith roasting. So I had maybe 2 or 3 months of experience commercially roasting, and I didn't really know that much at all. But I was like, I'm going to just roast the coffee and then put it out there. And it was whatever it is, $50 to be a part of this competition and everything. And it was just, more than anything else, it really showed me the coffee community, that there is this really niched, tight knitted family of roasters and enthusiasts and coffee shop owners and everything like that. And so the first year I was just like, this is really cool. And we tasted coffees that, so they do this roasting competition called Cascadia, and they do 50 roasters apply. And so I was like, great, I want to try all of these. And then my wife and some friends came down, and then we realized, tasting 50 coffees, it's very difficult, for someone that isn't used to it. If you're not tasting it the way that you cup, where you're sipping it and spitting it out. If you're drinking a little bit of all of those coffees, you're pretty wired, and your palate's shot at the end of that. You just can't taste the nuances. And so the next year, this past year in 2019, I did it again, and I was just I told my wife, don't even bother coming. I didn't place, I didn't get in the top 25. And I wasn't mad about it. And I thought it was a great learning experience. And you get the notes that they write on, the judges write on your coffees and everything like that. And so this past year, I just told my wife, don't even bother coming down. It's just, we'll taste a bunch of coffees, and then we'll, whatever. And then I went down and I was like, oh, I made the top 25. That's awesome. And then they take the top 25 for the people's choice, and then they vote on that. So there's 5 rounds, and then they pick the top of those 5 rounds, and then they pick out of that. And I ended up getting second place in the people's choice. The people, everyone there, I don't know, there's maybe 50 people or a little bit more than that down there voting. So they tried the coffees, and then they would vote on each of the sort of brackets, I guess. And I got second place in that. I was like, wow, this is great. And then was able to talk with people about it, and talk with my roasters. And I had an extra year. So I sort of had a different way of approaching it. Instead of just being I just need to turn in 3 pounds of coffee, I'm what am I trying to get out of this coffee? What is the purpose? Do I want to roast just one batch? Do I want to take 2 batches and blend them of this, this single coffee? And the difficult thing with that competition is they just give you 20 pounds of green beans. They don't tell you origin or anything. So
wow.
they don't, you don't know, was it grown at altitude? Is it African? Is it, South American? Is it from?
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
okay, because I was just going to ask you what you submitted, but so if they gave you the coffee, that's a whole different game changer.
Yep. So I mean, it puts it on a level playing field, because there are going to be I think a lot of the time prior they used to just sort of submit a coffee, and that's sort of not fair for someone that might not be able to afford,
Right.
these very unique, very specific, like micro lots where it's like no one, someone buys up the whole farm's worth of coffee, and it's like no one can buy it, and it's super unique and great, but that doesn't really help. And it's also for the everyday person, like tasting coffee side by side. If it's the same coffee versus two completely different origins, it makes it a little bit easier to be like, I like this one better than that one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
When it's the same coffee, when it's like they're both really good, but they're completely different.
That's an interesting way to approach a competition for that. I'm going to definitely have to look at that one and see the different reviews on it, because that's such a from the. I took the introduction to the SCA introduction to coffee course, was like my crash course into specialty coffee. And it was amazing just to sit down at the table, or to stand up around the table, I should say, and sample something from, a classic coffee from Colombia or Brazil, and then have something from, the same geographical area, but Costa Rica, and have it taste totally different, just because the way it was roasted and the way it was grown. And there's such a difference in those coffees, or that variety that it was. And it was just amazing to be able to see the nuances in it. And you don't get that a lot of times as a home brewer, because you don't have 12 coffees sitting in the cupboard. You got 2 bags, right. You got 1 bag, and you finish it, and then you get another one, and you're like, I think this tastes a little different than my last one. What's the nuances different?
That was one of the things that I had told to me many times when I first started sort of going to restaurants and doing tastings to get their business to roast for restaurants. Because what I did is I would take 5 coffees, a single origin, 5 different single origin coffees that were like my signature coffees. And I just do 5 pour overs side by side by side by side. And they try them one after the next. And they're like, I've never done this before. And I'm like, well, a Ugandan coffee is going to be a lot different than a Vietnamese, which is way different than a Brazilian. And so it's like, I don't want to just bring you one coffee, because for each restaurant, it's like, what are you pairing it with? Like, what's the purpose? Do you have a big dessert menu? Are there sweet things? And so you want something that's like more earthy and nutty and isn't so sweet? Or do you want something that is served after dinner? Are you a brunch place and you want a blend? Yeah. It's going to be vastly different from establishment to establishment. And I've had some friends come over where I'm just like, where I'm profiling a new coffee. So I do a coffee of the month, where I did for the first full year, I did a different coffee, single origin every month for the first year. So each month was a different coffee, and you could be a part of a subscription based. And then in the second year, I started it out like that, but then I decided I did a couple blends. I was playing around with some blends, and so I did some blends. But I've had people where it's like I come home from doing my profiling, and I have 6 small batches of a Honduras coffee, and a friend will come over and we'll try them all side by side, and they're all roasted a little bit differently. Like the profile is just a little bit different, like how much heat, how much air, all of these things that that you can adjust to try to bring flavors out, to to play around with the coffee as a roaster. And it, like, everyone that comes in, to just have 5 coffees in a row where you're having just a little bit of 5 different coffees, but it's the exact same bean, it's just roasted a little bit different. They're like, that's crazy that you can get different flavors just from taking an extra like 20 seconds, or adding a little bit more heat, or, everything, where, seemingly, if you were to look at them, you're like, they're all the same. And yet they're not,
So for somebody that's listening or watching later down the road or tonight that is looking at different coffees, whether you're looking at different coffees at the farmer's market or on my website or somebody or somewhere else, would you recommend that they get 3 Guatemalans, or would you recommend when they're get into this, that they would get maybe 3 different total origins? What would you think would be the best way to approach tasting multiple coffees?
I think it depends. So, I think a good way of doing it is, go to your website and, pick out like very different regions. So maybe pick, a coffee from Africa, maybe a Kenyan coffee or a Tanzanian coffee or Ethiopian or whatever, and try one from there. And then try one from like South America, just being like, oh, I got a Peru, a Kenyan, and something from like Sumatra, like an island coffee from Asia, and try those, because there's a lot of people that are like, I love Ethiopian, like naturally processed Ethiopians. They're super fruity and they're just like super tasty. And I can totally get behind that. I enjoy those. But I also really enjoy some like mid-Latins where it's like this Costa Rican is like velvety and caramely, and it's great for a different reason. And so when you find a coffee that you really like from a region, then I like to sort of branch out from there. So be like, oh, this coffee is from this specific region of Costa Rica.
Yeah.
I want to find another one from Costa Rica that's different, and is, roasted to a medium roast. And it's roasted about the same, but the tasting notes say something completely different. So how does that compare? And also get advice. I mean, there's so many people, so much information out there from people that want to like have these conversations, like, what you do right here, like having the conversation is like so important. And, if you go to a farmer's market, a lot of the time there's not like a whole lot of disconnect between the roasters, the people that are working at these small roasteries, these craft places, and you as a like consumer, right? So like you can go there and be like, are any of you guys, like people working the stand, are any of you the roasters? What would you suggest?
Yeah.
Why do you like this coffee? And I think that's, and then when someone is like, I really like this coffee for this reason, and they're passionate about it, and like, it's like people always want to share the things that they really enjoy, they like, it's like, you go to a good movie, you're like, have you seen this movie? This movie's awesome, right? And the same should be true with the things that we consume, right? So I think that is something that's like really, if you go to a farmer's market, very possibly the person that roasts the coffee is the owner of the coffee company.
Oh, yeah.
Is working the coffee stand, because they're just getting started, right? If you go into a Stumptown here in Portland, the owner of Stumptown isn't the guy that's brewing your coffee, right? Is because it's gotten so big. But at one point, Dwayne, the guy that started up Stumptown, was going door to door, essentially, selling this coffee, and he was passionate about it, right? So when you can like key in to finding those people that are like, oh, you got to try this coffee, ask your friends, like, and you go into a coffee shop and you have like a good cup of coffee from that coffee shop, pick up a bag of coffee from that coffee shop, a little local roaster, and being like, hey, what was in that like latte? What was the origin? Ask the questions. What was in that? Okay. Do you have something else like whole bean that I can take home that I can try on my own? And like you said, extraction process is going to be huge. It's going to be different doing a pour over versus doing a French press versus an AeroPress, or Italian espresso. It's going to be a little bit different, but you can try all of those extraction processes with that one coffee and be like, wow, this is the way I need to drink this coffee, and, get on the website, you get a 12 ounce bag of coffee, and you're going to have multiple consumptions out of that. So maybe like, today you're like, all right, well, I have a little bit more time. I'm going to do, a pour over, or I need to get ready. And so I need it to just sort of do its own thing. I'm going to do French press and just get it going, and then go get showered and then come out and press it.
Yeah. It's a quick shower. It's either a quick shower or really over extracted coffee, depending on how long your shower is. I've been feeling it with the Clever Dripper. I don't know if you ever messed with one of those or not, but
I don't have one at my house.
I've been very impressed with what I can get out of one of those, because, I start off and I get it going, then I make my wife's coffee, and by the time I've made the wife's coffee and delivered the coffee, it's just done. Yeah. And it's really, really, really good coffee every time if you get in there and you're consistent with weighing it and using the proper water temperature, everything. One of the things that we're looking at this season on the Common Grounds is sustainability in the coffee industry, and what that means at different levels. And one of the things it means for me as I'm not really a distributor. I'm kind of a distributor. I'd like to more say I'm a facilitator. I facilitate people finding other coffee that they didn't know. So I know what I have to do to sustain my business model, and that's traffic. I need people to go to the website. I need people to buy your coffee. At what level? And you need the same thing. You need people to buy your coffee. But when you're looking at your sustainable business model, how do you apply that to what kind of coffee you are roasting, and what's the balance? It's kind of a big question I threw at you in the middle of the interview. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I think it's something that you should be thinking about at any level, and at each level it will be. I think it has the potential to be different. So I think what it sort of comes down to is, like, what does your company stand for, and what is the purpose of like what you're doing? Because, if part of it is I want to help this community, not only the coffee community, but I want to help the greater good of the coffee community. So if I know there's the opportunity to, source a coffee where $1 from every pound that I buy goes to, programs that help give money to women and children that are working in the industry. So women that are in the fields that are picking and stuff like that, and then children, like providing daycare for children that need it, or schooling for kids that need it, for when their families are working in the fields and in the industry. I think that's something that you need to look at, and I think personally it comes from the sense that the tide lifts all ships. Is like, let's do good to make everything better, everyone better, right? Let's educate people not only on my specific coffee, but coffees in general, so that people can go out and have good coffee. And you're going to, like, people will always speak with their wallets, so to speak. So it's like, if you are really, if that's something that's really important to you, people are going to like be willing to spend a little bit more to get a better quality product, a product that is more sustainable, a product that is benefiting the communities where the coffee is grown. I think those are all important things, and there's always going to be, people that get their coffee at Costco, and they don't care, and it's the cheapest thing, right? And same is true about wine or cheese or meats or anything. But I think we have to look at what we are consuming in everything in our lives. What are we consuming? What is the purpose of that consumption? Because I've had the great opportunity to travel throughout the world. Not a ton, but I've been, a few years ago, we got to go to Vietnam and Cambodia. And so, you go to a place where there's, third world countries, and people are joyous and they're happy, and they're working really hard to like help their community and, it's like, it's like, let's do more for everyone instead of this, like being selfish and being like, well, it's about me. Like, I want to get, the cheapest thing just so that I can make more money, or I just, the volume is this, and so I can make more money if I buy this one product. I don't care like how it impacts the environment. I don't care how like it impacts the community in which like, they're doing it. As long as I can get it for this price, like I can get it. I think that's sad, and I think we owe it to ourselves, but we also owe it to like people that have come before us and been working really hard to do it, and we owe it to the people that are going to, keep this community going after we're gone, after our business is closed, after we pass away. All of those things, I think, I still want, people to enjoy good coffee, and with the price of coffee going down, you see a lot of farms that just start cutting down their crops and say, well, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And so like, it doesn't help. It doesn't help the community as a whole, of specialty coffee roasters or growers or anything like that, to not be actively engaged in trying to figure out, the why behind your purchasing, the why behind your selling, and the purpose of our companies.
Yeah. And you look at some of the price points on it, and you look at, we started offering green coffee beans from Chica Bean, and they're a conglomerate of female farmers in Guatemala. Amazing coffee. I've been selling their roasted stuff for a while. And the fact that we can get the farm gate price to them that is double, if not triple, what they would get on another, if they were trying to sell it through 3 other hands. And now it's, we sold 20 pounds last night. And that is just an amazing thing to think of. They would have had to sell 60 pounds years ago to make what they did off that coffee. And now that they can continually to do that and reinvest in those farming practices. And that's like the LIFT program that Emily's involved with, is just an amazing way to increase sustainability with these farms. And increase the quality of coffee that we're getting, which is a really cool benefit, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I mean, Novus does a really good job educating both the roasters, someone like me, and having like webinars in this time. Like, you know, I've gotten to be a part of webinars and stuff like that, which is great. And give me, you know, someone starting off or getting into the industry and growing in the industry is great. But then they also, you know, they do work with these programs that are benefiting the communities as a whole, like where they're buying the coffees from, right? And I think that speaks to who Novus is as a coffee importer, because I quickly found as you know, starting up and listing, you know, that I have a coffee company. It seems like everyone knows someone that has a farm in, you know,
Yeah.
XYZ. I just got 2 samples of coffee from a guy that's like, oh, I have a family member that has coffee farms in the Philippines. Can I give you some samples? And can you roast them off and tell me what you think? I'm just starting. I'm trying to figure out if there's even a market for, you know, Filipino coffee in, you know, in Portland,
Yeah.
in America. And so it's just like, okay, like, but before I start buying that coffee, you know, if I decide on that, I need to have the conversation about what do they stand for as an importer? How are they helping? Right? They can't just be the middleman. They need to lift up, you know, it's like you're a facilitator of people finding all of these, all these other micro and craft coffee roasters, right? But you're also doing things to educate people. You're having, you know, you have these channels, you have these interviews, and so that like that helps, right? And so that speaks to what you're trying to do, you know, as a company.
One of these days we're going to have to do some we're going to do some live cuppings. One of the we'll send out, you know, hey, this is what we're sending out. Everybody's going to get the same coffee. We're going to sit down and do a virtual cupping. As I think was one of our subscriptions that we're working on later on down the road. But for someone who's just looking at it, and we're fixing to be out of time here. When somebody's looking at getting into small scale coffee roasting, maybe they're in between hobby roasting and they're eyeing maybe selling it, what resources would you point somebody to, and what helped you out?
So, I mean, you need to figure out how much you're expecting to roast. So what's your margin? What's the volume that you're going to try? You know, if it's like I need to roast, you know, 50 pounds once a week because I have a farmer's market that I want to sell my coffee at, you know, on Saturdays, then figuring out how you can facilitate that, right? And I think there are a lot of smaller, you know, the equipment to buy for a big coffee roaster is substantial, right? So I think there are like Buckman's, like they kind of offset some of that where they're like, the time that we're not roasting for our company, we're going to allow other roasters to come in and lease out the equipment. And I think that there are probably anywhere in the United States, there are companies like that, and or there are small roasters that their roaster is setting idle for hours throughout the day, where if you go in and you start to have the conversation and you start to build a relationship with the person, and maybe they're like, be like, can I roast with you like 2 or 3 times so that you can see that I'm not going to ruin your equipment?
Yeah.
And then can I come in here once a week and roast for a couple hours, you know, while you're not doing it, and I'll pay you this amount of money? I think there's a lot of people that would look at that and take that as an opportunity to help their business, right? Being like, well, it's not, you know, they're not really in my space because I have this, and they're, you know, just going to roast for this. I think there's a lot of people that think it's more cutthroat than it is. I've gotten so much help from other roasters, over the last couple of years. So
it's such a cool industry as I've gotten into it, and seeing people help each other on the forums and in different areas where they're sharing knowledge, because it's the second most consumed commodity in the world. There's tons and tons of room to expand, and there's tons of people that are drinking coffee every day, but they just don't know how good specialty coffee is. And that's one of our missions here at the Common Grounds podcast, is to share stories like this with our viewers and our listeners and our fans around the country and around the world. Actually, I think we've got some people tuning in from South Africa tonight, which is really, really cool. So, Kevin, thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your week. I'll be interested in how that Filipino coffee turns out. Let me know, because I'll definitely put it up on the website when you get there. But I appreciate you coming on, man. Looking forward to what you're doing. Where can we find you at besides Roasters Marketplace?
So at my website, so beansmithroasting.com. And then, there's links to that. Like, locally in Portland, I'm basically just selling wholesale to restaurants, and then I sell online. So that's just your place and my place. And then through my Instagram, it links through my Instagram. So Beansmith Roasting, at Instagram, and then you can link to finding my stuff too. So it's pretty easy.
Awesome. I appreciate you joining me tonight, and everybody out there on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for giving us some really good questions tonight. For those listeners that have listened further down the road, we appreciate it on the Common Grounds podcast. You can find us on YouTube under the Common Grounds podcast, and on all your major podcasting stations on Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Play, or something. There's a whole bunch of places that you can find our podcast now. So, Kevin, thanks for coming on. We're going to roll out of here. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to hit you up in the green room after this. Have a good night.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.